Hi there! Welcome back to another weekly craft video. My name's Tori. I'm the Makerspace Librarian at the Irvin L. Young Memorial Library in Whitewater, Wisconsin. This week I have a craft activity for adults. We will be making these Beeswax Wraps. These function as a replacement for cling film in your kitchen for any bowls or containers that are kind of a weird shape or that you don't have a lid for. These can work as coverings for those things and go in your refrigerator. I'm going to show you how you can make a couple of these wraps. These are reusable. You can wash them in the sink with cold water and dish soap. Don't use hot water. Don't put them in the dishwasher. Any heat is going to melt the ingredients that are on this piece of fabric, and that's not going to be fun to clean up. You can reuse these as many times as they still work for you. Once they start to lose their tacky stickiness, you can actually refresh them by adding more ingredients, heating them, and then allowing them to dry. Or if you're just finished with them, you can toss them in your compost because they are completely biodegradable. This is a zero waste option or alternative to cling film. And I don't know about you, but I'm already starting to think about the upcoming holidays, and these make really great handmade gifts. It can be a little bit tricky to get these to turn out exactly how you want them to. So stay tuned till the end and I'll give you some troubleshooting tips. Craft kits are located outside the library's doors on the side of the building that's closer to the parking lot. They are outside on a cart. You can stop by and pick yours up anytime this week between 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. In your craft kit, you're going to receive some pieces of fabric that are already cut like this. This is 100% cotton fabric. You're going to get some beeswax pellets. These are 100% organic, and these are going to melt into the fabric and give it that waxy coating. You are going to get some powdered pine resin. This is pretty sticky and it helps your beeswax cling to whatever you put it on. You're also going to get a little bit of organic jojoba oil to sprinkle over your wraps. These help your wraps stay soft and malleable. I'm going to show you two methods for making these beeswax wraps. The first method is using an iron. You're going to need parchment paper, not wax paper, parchment paper, and you'll just put the bees or the fabric in between the parchment paper and iron onto that to melt everything into the fabric. The second method that you can use is just covering a baking sheet with some aluminum foil, because you don't want to be scraping melted beeswax off of your baking sheet, and then just popping it in the oven and allowing everything to melt into the fabric. In your craft kit, you're going to get these little containers with all the ingredients that you'll need. The beeswax pellets and the powdered pine resin, you can just shake over your piece of fabric. The jojoba oil, if you have a dropper at home, you might want to use that, but I just found this little straw and I'm just going to use it to pick up a little bit of oil and dab it all over my fabric. I'm going to iron this beeswax wrap. I set my iron to the highest setting, cotton linen, and I turned off the steam. So a good rule of thumb for these wraps is to use 2 parts beeswax, 1 part pine resin. So I'm just going to eyeball it here. The pine resin is a really important ingredient for the beeswax wraps because it's sticky and it's going to help your wrap cling to itself and to any glass or container that you might wrap it around. going to be very warm to the touch, but as soon as you're able to handle it safely, pick it up and start waving it in the air so that it can dry fully. This wrap I am going to bake in the oven. I preheated my oven to 170 degrees and it takes about 4 minutes for everything to melt. Do not leave these wraps unattended in the oven. They finish very quickly and every oven is different. Beeswax is flammable, and when you put it in the oven it can easily burn and turn brown. So don't leave these unattended. Tends to clump up, so when I sprinkle it I kind of ground it up finer with my fingers, because if you put big chunks of the pine resin just on top here, it won't melt, it will just harden and sit on top of the beeswax. So you want to kind of grind this up with your fingers into a fine powder. So I got this one out of the oven and waved it until it was dry. I feel like the pine resin didn't fully melt and sink into the fabric. There's some pieces where there's bigger chunks of pine resin kind of just sitting on top here. It turned out all right, but I think that the iron method works better. I'm actually going back over the one that I baked in the oven with the iron, just because I feel like the ingredients didn't get fully mixed and spread around, and because I feel like they didn't fully melt. After experimenting with both of these methods, I really prefer the iron method just because I feel like it fully melts all of the ingredients into the fabric, and you can use the iron to sort of spread and mix the ingredients around so that they are evenly distributed. And here are my final results. As you can see, they're pretty stiff, but they're still flexible. Some people like to use these to wrap food directly, like wrap an onion in here or a sandwich. I don't really like to do it that way. I just like to use these as covers for my bowls or pots that don't have lids. So how I would cover this one here is, first I want to heat the wrap with just the heat of my hands, and to do that I just like to crumple it up because it's the fastest way to just heat the whole thing. And as I'm doing this, I can feel the wrap becoming stickier and more malleable and more flexible. So once I've just heated it with the warmth of my hands, I unfurl it and just use it to cover my bowl. And it really sticks very well to itself. So I just kind of press it to itself around the edge of the bowl. And there it is. A couple troubleshooting tips for these wax wraps. The first ones I made did not turn out the way I wanted them to. I added too much beeswax and not enough pine resin and jojoba oil. So my first beeswax wraps were really stiff. They had a lot of like beeswax coating the outside that was like peeling off, and they were not sticky and not very flexible. So I went back and I made some more, less beeswax, more pine resin and jojoba oil, and that made a big difference, and that helped a lot. If you do get one that's like that, you think maybe you've added too much beeswax, you can just heat it up again and then dab at it with a paper towel to soak up some of that beeswax. These can be reheated, and you can try to take away some of the ingredients you added by soaking them up with a paper towel, or you can add more of a certain ingredient if you feel like you didn't add enough the first time. So You can play around with these until you get them exactly how you want them.